Greetings all. Today I'm here to give some general tips and advice for beginning to intermediate guitar players. I don't know if I would say I'm a pro level guy. I'm certainly no John Petrucci, but I've been playing for about 18 years now, so I know my way around the neck a little bit better than your average Joe. At least I'd like to think. But over the years, I've had several people come up asking me, how did you get this good? Or how do you do this? How do you do that? And especially lately, I've had a lot of friends ask me for help, just in general, like if they're starting out. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to kind of shed some light. This video will have some harsh truths in it, so keep that in mind. However, the goal here is to make you better. So without further ado, let's get started. First and foremost, work on your posture. If you don't have proper posture or technique, you're going to make guitar playing a lot harder than it actually is. That's a whole rabbit hole I could go down in a totally separate video, so I won't go into too much depth here, but take a look at this. Dudes who will wrap their whole thumb around the neck, especially up here, because you can barely, I can't even stretch my fingers when I go to the upper strings here, and it's going to really be a detriment to your playing. I also see guys put their thumb way off to the side like this. It's even worse. Like I can't even hardly reach the string, right? All you got to do is just shift your hand and put it behind the neck like this. Now look at the freedom I have, right? So you just make this position with your hand, okay? And then you just stick it behind the neck and you have the utmost freedom. Next up, for the love of all that is holy, get your damn picking right. This is probably my biggest pet peeve. Too many times have I seen or heard players know a song front to back, but they still sound terrible because of sloppy picking technique. Either they have no dynamics, their pick is way too perpendicular to the string, they're out of time, off beat. There's several factors here. But I'm telling you, if you don't get your picking dialed in, I don't care if you know the song, you're going to sound like shit. Paul Gilbert has a very good video addressing this. He shows how to pick properly, very good tips on alternate picking, so I'm going to put that in the description. But I'm going to show you a couple examples too of what to do and what not to do. Here's an example of poor posture for your right hand picking. I see a lot of guys either hold it like this, or they'll hold it like this, like an OK sign almost, and it will be straight out from their fingernail like this. Don't do that. What you want to do, point it straight down, grip it like this. You're still kind of making an OK sign, right? But this is what it's going to look like from your perspective. It's going to be pointing straight down even though your hand is perpendicular. And that's going to make it a lot easier to pick fast. Another thing too I see, guys have their pick way too perpendicular to the string. So they will pick like this, where it's totally flat against the string. Angle it just a hair. And if you do that, you're going to have sort of a scratchy sound, right? But it's going to have less resistance on the strings, and you can do shit like this. Now, if I do that when I'm going perpendicular, it's going to be a lot sloppier. So if I go totally flat, very sloppy. Once again, kind of angle your wrist down like this. I see dudes kind of picking like this. Don't do that. And also, try to mute the strings too with just your flesh of your palm on the side here, rested against the bridge. Angle your hand or your wrist down just ever so slightly, so it kind of has this thing going on, right? So it's like this. And then when you tremolo pick, you're barely going to have any resistance. Speaking of picking, try different guitar picks, experiment a little bit. We're all built different. What works for me might not work for you. I've been around the park with guitar picks, as you can see. A good place to start would be get a variety pack from Dunlop. It has several different gauges and materials in it. They're going to sound different, they're going to feel different, and that's actually how I discovered that I prefer Ultex. Ultex in particular, for me, it's a bit stiffer than most materials, so I can actually get a thinner gauge, but at the same time, I still have a lot of control and it's going to sound bright because it doesn't flex despite it being thin. So that's just my preference. Some picks, they're going to have different bevels, they're just going to be different, and if you find the right one, it will actually improve your playing as well as the way you sound. Slow down. Don't practice until you get it right, practice until you can't get it wrong. Drop the tempo on the tab a little bit and gradually build your speed up until you can play it confidently. Don't just learn where the notes are and then hit the ground running right off the bat. Doing that is like trying to run a marathon with flip-flops on. Yeah, it's going to get you there, but you're going to be tripping up along the way and you're going to be behind the pack. You will never sound good doing this if you cannot play the riff or the song at a lower tempo cleanly and confidently. An easy way I find to figure out a song, especially if it's challenging, is download Tux Guitar. That's Tux Guitar. It's a Guitar Tab program. It's like Guitar Pro, but it's a free version, and it will still run Guitar Pro files. You can control the tempo on it, which I'll demonstrate. Once you get it down at full speed, try increasing the BPM even just a little more than the actual song by maybe 10 to 20 BPM and see if you could still cleanly play it. If you can, then you're right where you need to be. Another way to tell if you're doing it right is if you're playing along and you can't distinguish between yourself and the actual song. If you barely hear a difference, then you got it. Are you trying to learn a song or a riff or a solo and you're just having trouble because of how long and drawn out it is? Break it up. You do not have to learn the entire riff all at the same time. Learn it by measure or maybe just by a few notes until you really get it down. Here's what I mean by breaking things up. So take this riff that I made, for example. You're never going to learn that if you try to play the whole thing at once. Break it up, so try just the first few notes. Maybe focus on that. Gradually add another note. Something like that. Until you can get it full speed. Maybe go to the next section. Don't worry about this first part. Just play this. Right? So now put it together when you get that full speed. Especially that little widdly diddly part. Maybe just those notes. Maybe just the rest of the notes. Once again, break it up into small sections, then put it all together. Next up, practice bending in tune. This is all too common. I see guys who just plain can't bend properly. Sounds terrible. They'll bend and it'll be way sharp or way flat. This is an easy thing to remedy. Let's show you an example. So let's say you're at the 15th fret. I'm in E flat, by the way. And you want to go to the 17th fret, that pitch. Literally all you do is just pick this and try to match the pitch. See there? And let's say you could do this with a half step too. Like if I want to say bend at the 7th and I want to hit the 8th when I bend. Pretty easy, right? And when you bend, Don't just bend with 1 or 2 fingers. I see way too many guys do that and they're totally out of pitch. Say I want to bend a whole step. Let's say I want to go back up to the 17th fret in the middle of a solo or something, and they just take that first finger. Most of the time they're going to sound out of tune. You really want to grip it with 3 or 4 fingers, and don't be afraid to be rough with it. That's what she said. But say I want to hit this pitch, grip it. Especially if you're going to do like a double bend, like. If you do that with 1 finger, you're going to screw it up. Practice things you suck at. Everybody, including myself a lot of times, has a habit of playing the same riff or the same song over and over. And yeah, it's fun, but you're not improving, you're playing. There's a difference between practicing and playing. If you have something new and challenging, it can be intimidating and frustrating, but if you take your time and just focus on doing just that, I promise you'll get it and you'll be better for it. Just for example, I didn't learn how to do this overnight. That took a lot of time and patience and frustration, but now as you can see, I could do this in a second nature. It's all about putting the time in. Here's something that can be a little hard to accept for some people. Nobody cares about your excuses. If you're playing something that sounds bad or you're playing poorly, it's not YouTube or Twitch's fault for having audio compression. It's not your amp's fault for sounding like you're a can of Angry Bees unless it's just a bottom of the barrel amp. It is user error. It's also certainly not the fault of the person critiquing you. If somebody is criticizing your playing, don't take it as an insult. Take it as honest criticism, because more than likely, unless they're just being rude for the sake of being rude, it's probably true. This is an opportunity to get better. If you're performing in front of people, whether it's a live stream or even on stage, the average Joe who doesn't play guitar is not going to care if you're, I don't know, drunk or if your amp is having problems or something. If it sounds bad, it sounds bad. Don't try to emulate or play exactly like your guitar heroes. You're not James Hetfield. Don't try to downpick Master of Puppets all the time just because James does it. You're making a really easy riff a lot harder than it has to be. And I feel like a lot of beginners, sometimes intermediates, will actually use the downpicking thing with him as a crutch not to learn how to alternate pick properly. And it's going to show through. And just a heads up, guys, James knows how to alternate pick too. If you think you may be physically unable to play a riff or a song, then experiment. Navigate the neck, try to find the note somewhere else rather than the place that you're having trouble with. It doesn't matter if you're playing something exactly the same as the original artist as long as you're hitting the correct note and it sounds clean. Like, I don't know, if you're having a riff that has this note in it on the D string, maybe bring it up to the A string up to the 12th fret because you have less of a stretch. Same note, right? Here's another example of what I mean, because this also applies to even just your finger position. So like this simple riff from Hollow from Alice in Chains, it goes like this. Yeah, it's easy, but I actually like putting my ring finger down here because I find like I can play this cleaner every time, more like when I do this. And same goes for things like Master of Puppets too, like the chorus here, it normally goes like this, right? Well, I like actually making it as if I were doing a power chord, so instead of rolling my finger, I'll actually do this. And I find I play it a little cleaner. Here's another cool little trick. Let's say you can't make a stretch. So this song from Black Dahlia Murder, I certainly can't. There's a part where you have to go from here and you got to stretch all the way over here. I can barely do that. Easy way to remedy this? Just shift your hand. It's that easy. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm just going to play it slowly. If I tried to stretch that, I'm never going to play it accurately. And here it is at fast. Accent notes in the riffs and pay attention to your picking dynamic. Not only can this add some flair to your playing, it can also help with rhythm. So like think about it like this. If you chug here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm accenting the one note, right? So if I amplify this, listen how this sounds. And if I just play it without any dynamic whatsoever, it's going to sound like this. Sounds completely different, right? I see too many guys will play this long riff. Each note will have the exact same intensity, no real energy to distinguish between each one, and it's going to either sound robotic or sloppy, or both in some cases. So here's an example of a riff I did. It has a lot of accented notes, so I'm going to be accenting the A string, right? So it sounds like this. Okay, now if I don't accent it, it's going to sound like this. Sounds much less interesting. And this doesn't apply to just metal. I mean, if you play something bluesy, you don't want to play this lick like this. You want to play it like this. Or maybe like a Stevie Ray Vaughan thing. If you're playing an SRV kind of riff, you don't want to be doing this. No, you want to do it like this. Put some energy into it. This one's easier said than done, unfortunately, but relax. Try your best not to tense up. You can strain your arm or even injure yourself sometimes if you tense up too often for too long. And it's also going to make your playing sound terrible anyway. If you can't help it and it keeps happening, take a break, come back to it, and just focus on being as relaxed as possible, especially if it's a really challenging lead or riff. If you're doing gallops or some kind of weird tremolo picking pattern, it's normal and perfectly fine to tense up a little bit. But if you're playing a riff or a lead, or you just happen to start feeling a lot of pressure in your forearm or your wrist or something, then you need to take a break and focus on just relaxing for a minute. Take a breather, focus on loosening yourself up. Take your guitar to a professional to make sure it's set up properly if you're unsure and you don't know how to do it yourself. This can make or break your playing and your experience. If you're getting a ton of fret buzz or the strings are way too high, something is wrong and it can kill your enjoyment of playing and learning. A buddy of mine, hey Brent, has a guitar that he was able to actually fit his index finger underneath the strings. That's a problem. Last and certainly not least, just have fun. You don't have to always be doing an exercise or practicing something 24/7. Just screw around, come up with some riffs of your own, jam to something you already know and enjoy for inspiration or something. The more you do this, the more likely you're going to discover your own style and enjoy what you do more. That's what it's all about, having fun and the inspiration of playing music. Well, that's it for today. I hope it had some sort of insight, and if you want to take anything from this at all, just consider this is all about having a good time. If you're not having fun, you need to find another hobby. But until next time, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or want any additional advice, please comment below. And until next time, horns up.